It's January 20th, 2022. Lou, my outside right now, there's some flurries, some snow flurries, but it's not accumulating. Lou is fixing Linda's LG TV. That's the LG, and then you put a long pause for TV, otherwise the sounds get confusing. It sounds like a campaign of some sort they're not even slightly related. So apparently Lynn's TV's not as smart as Lewis's. Lewis's got an update, Lynn's didn't. They now use this thing in order to receive messages. They call it a remote. Looks almost like a keyboard of some sort, which means looks more like a possibility on that thing because it's got no buttons on it, no dials anymore. Whole system changed. I do not feel safer now that this was introduced. I feel less safe. Goes to a larger cosmological egg, cosmological nursery, cosmological constant formula that's been ecologically being observed in, however, the more important echelon is handling that. I don't have access to at the moment. It reminds me there was a saying, which I've never really said or passed forward. I've had no reason for it. I live in something in New York State. They call the city of New York the Big Apple. So if I was talking family tree, I'd be an apple tree. Just for states people within my intercontinental design, so we don't drift in any way, for any reason, with one whatever, based on my individualness of concern. In my particular apple tree that was somehow planted in New York, or fruited and apparated in fruition in New York, waiting, by the way, to be harvested and picked by something very special and important, not left to just dangle and fall to the floor and rot and never be whatever. They had a saying, Grandma from Ireland, passed forward to her, or her children heard it, her first generation New Yorkers or North Americans. They heard with ancestors, there was an orchard before their fruit arose, was seeded, and came to whatever. There was something passed forward in colloquialism, as like one of those holes in the wiffle ball with the fingers through, clutching to your chest. You really have no reason for speaking of it or upon it, unless you find yourself in a degrading societal situation, or a dangerous situation, or a dangerous operation, or lack thereof, since it seems to be some colon was perforated and preferential treatment was frowned upon, but somehow it stayed in position for a really dangerous length of, I don't know, 70, 80 years, somewhere around there. But they did say something about, under this whatever, there's some false marks on the checkerboard of checkered past because of safety measures and procedures, almost fail-safes. like if there's going to be a fail safe, there's some fail safes built in. Not that they should be targets that are forced positions to rearrange and charge for, or not to, whatever. It feels like we've lost our navigation, but there was a saying that George Washington already chopped down a cherry tree. I'm an apple tree. Apple trees appear in arborist forms in an orchard. What I'm confused about is the fact that my fruit was left to hang and fall and rot on the ground. And it looks like there's a whole lot of different arborvitae and whatever planting going on, which is whatever scandalous. I don't know if it's tied into the fact that this arrived in. We used to have a safety measure with few programs, but more honesty. This seems to be more programs, but less integrity, more interpretation, less effectiveness. There was another important mention. Oh, and in my family tree, at the societal or lack of societal measures, they spoke of Lynn's bushel of apples, or usually you pick apples in a bushel, is what they call it, but that word sound could whatever, so I'm gonna say that on the harvest of 10 fruitions prior to my arrival, they told me to call them Aunt, Anaunt, and Uncle, Uncle. That was their way of communicating a title before a day label of how the apples in on this one New York tree were already communicating at. I was always different than the rest of the children. I was Lynn and Lou's only one. There's other more important factors, but I used to sit with the adults and the fruit, Grandma's fruit, and I would just speak to all of her fruit in apple format to try to digest and understand I felt like a little alien in the room always anyway, but didn't want to be a monster, so I tried to speak to them as humans in apple fruition baked prior before I got here. So that's the difference between 19th century, 7-decade, 8-year, and sliding into a 20th century disaster in decade 2 plus 2 years. There was something on the checker past that referenced 1776. It's a monumental, important document, but I'm not quite sure it was relayed properly to the apple orchard since I don't know if Washington was able to chop a cherry tree. So that goes back to performance and results and predicate for my level or lack thereof of etiquette, because there's some things that my fruit waiting and ripening on a tree was just waiting for, and I'm now at 43 sitting on the floor of the same residential unit, and there's a lot of actual events that went into effect that are just as dangerous to my person as they sound. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. And it is Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.